Secret to prosperity in a changing world. This is mainly for executives and business people, or people who think like them. And part one, why would you want to look at another income? We'll give you some reasons for your interest. And I'm John Hurley. But first, some statements of purpose. Number one, many of today's great young men and women representing tomorrow's leaders are vulnerable now in a world of seemingly endless, stupid wars and financial crises. There is thus a clear and urgent need to find ways to ensure their effective survival for leadership in what we hope and trust will be a better world tomorrow. If followed to the letter, this program can offer a rapid development of cash flow for really good people with the desire and ability to lead and help others. It's legal, ethical, and we believe the fastest, simplest, fairest approach possible, backed by a very successful company, itself a model of integrity and professionalism. And finally, part one deals with the why you may need such a program. Part two demonstrates the system of how, which maximises initial returns, before dealing with the complexities and benefits of products in part three. So let's save time with all this. I'll go through the program fast, so I hope you'll be excited rather than bored, even after seeing it many times. First time through, you may want to sometimes hit pause to check numbers or understand the information better. You're welcome to do that. So let's go. Over the last couple of years at least, we've had, particularly in the alternative media, bad news. The real news, I think. And the main sources for that have been in the bottom left-hand corner, and the main commentators that I've listened to, because they make sense, in the bottom right-hand corner. So fast forward, pause for detail if you want. Today's global economy. The euro may not survive. Near depression, recession not over. One thing that strikes me is the human tragedy of 1 out of every 7 Americans. That's today 46 million people on food stamps. That's horrible in the land of the free and riches, supposed to be. So let's look at the US economy for a moment in a whole series of comments here, and I'll just whiz through them quickly because you may want to stop and look at one particular item that affects you personally. So, on to page 2, pension crisis, derivatives double. The Federal Reserve, the banksters, I think you'll have to agree, are behind most of today's problems. So you may want to examine that a bit further. But Paul Krugman has said all these things. It's going to be painful. It's time to get prepared. There is no time to lose. So, what about you? Where you stand? If you're a business person, can you afford business failure, possible loss of life savings and hardship? Other people are suffering that. If you're an executive, can you afford longer hours with less pay, fewer hours with much less pay, or even sudden unexpected job losses? That's happening. You can run you and see it. So doesn't it make sense to look for some form of insurance for sudden loss of income? A separate involvement to what you're doing now, because you don't want to get them muddled up together. And minimal capital outlay. That speaks for itself. So we're looking for additional streams of income that are safe, in other words, not here today and gone tomorrow. Significant, in other words, we're going to talk thousands of whatever dollars or whatever currency rather than hundreds, and super fast. We don't want to hang around for years waiting for things to happen, do we? Also, very importantly, whatever we do needs to be legal and ethical, because we don't want to rip people off any more than we want them to rip people off, and us in particular, do we? And so, solutions. Look at some solutions. This received in the Post a couple of years ago, as you can see from the date. America jobless, homeless, and all those things. And yeah, give us some money and we'll invest, and hopefully you'll make some good gains. Well, maybe you will, maybe not. But here was another one lady with a beautiful Irish accent on the phone asked me did I have $25,000 to $30,000 to invest, and she sent me this. Reasons for trading, how much money do you hope to make? That sounded great, but then it starts on the negatives. Can you afford to lose? Exit to take profits, balance to keep risk under control. Yeah, and that to me, as a simple soul, was too complex and risky. And so I said to myself, where can I go for simpler advice, less risk? Let's start with Robert Kiyosaki, and he's a rather successful fellow. Wrote this book with feedback online from people like you and I. And we're going to look at just a few of the rules that he states. First 5 on page 120. Money is knowledge, or knowledge is money. Well, I think that's fairly straightforward. Learn how to use debt, and he makes the interesting distinction that negative debt is when you invest in something, and either through poor choices or inflation, which we're gazing in the face of now, you're going to lose money in the long run. Positive debt, on the other hand, is where you invest in something which is going to return you increased value, and most particularly we can talk about cash flow, and he talks about the necessity to control cash flow. He said, I prepared for bad times in the 1980s, and today he only knows good times. And what that means for you and I is that if he started in the 1980s preparing and today's doing well, then we need to get a move on, don't we? I think you'd agree. Let's have a look for a moment or two at his famous cash flow quadrant. Now, that's where ease for employee on the left-hand side, dependent on the employer as well as market conditions. The self-employed person who may have a corner shop, and might be a doctor, a lawyer, or surgeon or someone like that, and they're vulnerable also to market conditions, but also to their own personal health. Whereas if we look at being an independent business, or relatively independent business, under the umbrella of a big business owner, then there is a lot more protection, and yeah, we can build something with leveraging. I'm going to come back to that. If all goes well, then we can become investors, and to that lady with the beautiful Irish accent. On the next page, bearing that in mind, I'm just going to whiz through those first 3. Now, they don't really apply in the affirmative to the left-hand side, do they? You stop working for any reason, you stop getting paid. Importantly, he then says, do you have multiple sources of income? Well, we're going to talk about 4 additional streams of income, maybe more if you've got the time, the energy, and the ability to do that. If you're an employee, are you working for an employer who's being left behind? Yeah. As fashions change and we go from things like vinyl records to CDs and to other things, yes, you may be employed in one company for a while and it closes down because the fashion's gone. And importantly also, are your friends and family moving forward or being left behind financially? Wouldn't it be lovely to be able to offer a hand to someone who's having a struggle, so long as they appreciate it, of course. So where do we go from here? There's a business model that can best fulfill all these criteria, and that is network marketing. It's had a rocky history from the 1970s onwards, but today it is becoming more and more important as an option. And we'll see why now. With positives, it is home-based, and particularly today, we can virtually do 95% of our business over the phone, on the internet, on Skype, all these processes, and maybe only sally forth from the car in our automobile once a week or once a month just to meet some people face to face, which is also good. Low risk, we're going to talk less than $1,500. And excellent products. And when you think about it, this is an industry where probably less than 5% of the people involved are really top quality salespeople and trained salespeople. So unless the products are so good that they virtually sell themselves, eventually everything, distributors and company, go down the drain. Now let's have a look at the negatives though, and the first one is one that keeps on coming around, and I think there must be someone feeding this all the time, but Ponzi or illegal pyramids. And a certain Bernie Madoff with the money made Ponzi pyramids quite well known a while back. But there are also legal pyramids, because the structure is similar in both cases, except that the way the structure is used is very, very different. Now, in the case of Bernie Madoff with the money, he started at the top, brought people in who invested money with him, and gradually that expanded, and as the people came in at the bottom, their investments went to pay the exorbitant commissions of the people higher up. Now, don't need Einstein's brain to work out that eventually the whole structure will collapse, and so it did, over 60 billion US dollars. And curiously enough, he's gone to jail. I say curiously because these days it seems that if you steal $1,000, you'll go to jail. If you steal $1 billion or $1 trillion, then you're just as likely to get a pat on the back and a promotion and maybe a holiday in the Bahamas or somewhere. But let's have a look at legal pyramids, though. Governments, with a president, prime minister, king, queen, dictator, or whatever at the top, and people like you and me at the bottom. Then there's the military, even more obvious, where you have generals at the top and their senior officers going all the way down to the simple soldier, the private. Corporations, likewise, CEO or president at the top, and in a retail organisation, you've got the shop assistants right along the bottom, or customers like you and I. And in each of those three cases, would you accept the fact that the people at the top are generally pretty talented? It's very hard to come in at the bottom and work your way to the top where the biggest money is. Well, religions, yeah, I'll leave that because structurally similar, but there aren't so many lessons there. Now, let's have a look at legal ethical networking. And important to say ethical because there are good ones and bad ones. But what we have here is Mr. White is the direct contact with the manufacturing or marketing company, and he brings in a couple of people who bring in people and so on. A difference arises, though, insofar as Mrs. Yellow, or Orange, I think she is, says, I can build a separate pyramid to that, which is all part of the overall pyramid, but someone can come in, Miss Green comes in at the bottom and says, I can build a bigger pyramid than you, Mrs. Orange. And so there are little sub-pyramids that are built all over the place. And here, the people towards the top of each of those pyramids tends to make the most money because they've put in the most effort and they deserve it. Would you agree? Yeah. So there's another from Mr. White. And there are some more negatives, and I think the principal ones that I seem to hear, skills needed. Well, dear viewer, I leave it to you to judge whether I've made this whole process simple enough or maybe I've made a mess of it. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. I think it's simple, but that's me. 200 plus active members. You can't argue against this. You need the numbers ultimately, which is 8 times 25 there, in order to build a significant residual income or leveraged income. And that traditionally has been so slow. You had to go out and talk to 50, 60, 100 people before you got anywhere. Snail-like. There needs to be a way to speed it up, and I believe we have it. Stay with me. But before we go any further, wait a minute. What do you really want? An extra 500 a month, 5,000, 50,000? Are you worried about there being a ceiling if you're a woman or a member of an ethnic minority? Now, women do exceedingly well in this, and also I want to help any ethnic minorities that I can find to do likewise. I want to prove a point there. What do you not want? There may be concerns or worries that you have. I'd love to discuss them with you, and you'll have my email address and phone number at the end of this presentation. So, importantly, think about it and maybe write it down for later. So, now let's look at the arithmetic, the math, if you like. Then, here we are, more information. That's me with Audrey, my wonderful wife. And you can phone us or email us. Let's talk. Yeah, you had some concerns? Yeah, let's discuss them.